Today's exit interview is with Larry Dix. Larry retired about 7 years ago, and so we're catching up with him midstream in his retirement. Larry was a big part of my career at Story. He hired me as a student intern in 1990, and then was part of my rehiring and re-entry back to the company. Larry I'll remember him for many things, but probably mostly for his investment in people. Whoever he worked with, he really, really invested in them, not only professionally, but personally. And Larry was a guy that helped me tear down a garage at my first house. He and his wife Bonnie would have Ann and I up to play cards. It was more than just a working relationship if you were in relationship with Larry. Second thing I'll remember about him is he was a career-long learner. He had a curiosity, and he was a real bulldog about it. He would just continually try something new, experiment with something. If he had a plan and he had a path, get out of his way. And he never mailed it in. He always was digging right up until the end. And that's a real admirable trait to learn from. And I learned that from Larry. I think you'll hear some of that in the podcast today, so I hope you enjoy it. Larry Dix. So Larry, when did you retire?
In 2014.
At the end of 2014, right?
No, at the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah, end of 2013, 2014.
So you've been retired 7 years.
Yeah.
So what have you been doing for 7 years? How have you been?
I tell people that all the stuff I used to do on the nights and weekends, I do during the day now and take it easy the rest of the time. But we've been traveling some too, and although this year is really cut with the COVID is really cut into that, but
Sure.
Taking care of Lisa too, with Lisa and stuff like that.
So I know that you love travel. So since you've been retired, where are some of the places you've gone?
Well, we took a trip to Europe where we went to Germany and Austria and Switzerland, and that was a good trip. And then we went to the UK, and we started in England, went to Scotland, Ireland, Wales. We were there like almost 3 weeks.
Wow.
A lot of our trips have been long, kind of long like that. And then we've just done some trips around the U.S. also. One of the ones I really enjoyed was we went out to Utah, and we spent like 2 weeks out there. We came in and we went to a bunch of the national parks, Zion and the Moab, and
Sure.
and in Monument Valley. A lot
So
of
do you
places.
camp when you do that, or do you?
That one we camped some, but it was so hot that we didn't. We'd stay. So Bryce Canyon was a good place to camp. Capitol Reef was a good place to camp because they were higher elevations. But like Zion is like 100 degrees, and it's like, I don't know, I don't think, we actually set up a tent the first night there, and I said, I don't think I can do this. Take the tent down and go get a motel room.
I know one of the things that you have enjoyed doing for many years is traveling to an away Iowa State football game.
Yeah.
Have you continued that in your retirement as well?
I have. I went, obviously won't go this year, so I think we missed 1 year there and there, but otherwise.
So
yeah.
have you been to every opposing Big 12 stadium?
Yes.
And
So we've been to,
if you were going to pick one to go back to, which one would you pick?
and of course they're not a conference anymore, but I really, College Station.
Texas A&M?
Texas A&M was a really cool trip. But we enjoyed a lot of our trips to the other Texas schools and stuff too.
Sure. I think I've heard you say before that you're really pleased how gracious other fans are at other places. Yeah. You're really made to feel pretty welcome almost anywhere you go, aren't you?
Yeah. I probably Lubbock was Texas Tech was the one that was the most downer, but as far as is kind of the way they were. But all the places were, Missouri had a bad rap, and we got along fine in Missouri, and different.
Well, it's fine when you wear a Missouri uniform. It's fine down there. They're easy to get along with.
But, West Virginia, we were out. It's kind of neat because, we got some new teams in the Big 12. And,
right.
And it was fun to go those places.
All right, so let's back up. Let's take it from the top. So where did you grow up? Tell me about your family. Tell me about your childhood.
I grew up in Emmitsburg, Iowa. My dad was a superintendent for Anderson Construction, which is based out of there. And he was a hard worker. And we didn't live hand to mouth, but we worked hard for everything we got. He was gone, sometimes out of town during the week, because there's the job sites, and just got back on weekends. He used to moonlight and stuff just to get some little extra money to do things. And so there were a lot of chores, and I, that fell on me to. I worked a lot of that kind of stuff while he was gone.
Do you have any siblings?
I had a sister who was 3 years younger than I was. And
so you did all the work and she got all the gravy jobs?
She, whatever, but nah. And then she was killed in a car accident in '74. So that was tough for everybody. My dad especially. My dad was really close to the SEALs and stuff like that. So worked, went to school. I worked for a farmer. I was doing stuff when I was younger, and then when I got 16, then I could work for Anderson. I could work on the job sites, and I did that during the summers.
So what kind of jobs did you do when you were starting then in the industry?
One of the fun things we got to do is I got to go with my dad around to jobs. I was like 10 years old, and I'd, spend a day with him at work, or, he was working in Woodbine one year, and I went down for a week and stayed with him and I was probably only about 10 years old then. So I was doing a bunch of stuff. I was running power buggy when I was 14 years old. I wasn't even working. I just pitching in, Sure. And, But he was a good cement finisher, and he taught me that trade. And, I set steel and did all those things.
Sure. All right, so you graduated high school, then what'd you do?
Went to Iowa State. I'd always, my plan was to go to Iowa State, so then I graduated. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, and I took the basic freshman engineering courses and stuff like that, but ended up in architecture. And I was there, I think I went like 5 quarters, but then I joined the National Guard. So I went out to Fort Ord for my military training, and then I was planning on going back to school, but when I got back, I got back from California a couple of weeks before classes started, and was doing all that stuff, and I kind of enrolled, and then it just didn't fit. It just didn't work, and so I just went to work for Anderson. So and stayed working for them till I came to work for Story.
So when you worked for Anderson and you were thinking about enrolling at Iowa State or re-enrolling, so did you live in Ames? Did you go back to Emmitsburg? Where'd you live?
Well, I met Bonnie, my wife, at Iowa State, and so I lived in the dorm.
Okay.
When I was going here, and then when I got. Then I had met, like I say, I met Bonnie, and then, so in '70 is when I joined the National Guard. Then I went back and lived at home when I went back to work for Anderson, and then Bonnie and I were married in '71. And then we traveled between the projects. We lived in Emmitsburg for a while, and then Janesville, Newton, Centerville, and then Indianola. Ethan was born when we were in Indianola, so I traveled with the work.
Sure.
We both did. Bonnie taught school. She went back to school and finished up at UNI. So I was doing a project in Charles City, and we moved to Janesville. Bonnie finished up in her degree at UNI because she hadn't. Then we moved from there to Newton, and actually she did her student teaching in Newton. And
wow. So she really ham and egged it with your work assignments.
Yeah, we kind of. There was a while where she went and lived with her parents like a semester because the way things were. But,
is she from Waterloo?
Yeah, she's from Waterloo.
Yep. I remembered that.
Yep. Okay,
so you worked for Anderson, and then what prompted you to come to Story, leave Anderson?
Brothers, Bob and Clarence. Clarence was the older one, and then he's like 10 years older than Bob. Those two ran. I mean, the whole office was Bob and Clarence and one bookkeeper. But Clarence decided to retire, so they were just retiring out of the business. They were just going to close the doors, and so I found that out in like February '76, and so I started looking for something else.
Sure.
And I knew of James Thompson and Sons because I was here at school, going to school at Ames. Plus, I worked 2 summers at Nevada. Dad was superintendent. I worked on the courthouse downtown.
Okay.
And so I liked Ames, and then James Thompson and Sons actually offered my dad a job in, I think it was 67 or so, to go to work for them. He almost did. Anderson ended up paying him more money and giving him a bonus to stay there. And so I thought it would be really cool because they said I could go to work there too, so we could live in Ames. I wanted to go to Iowa State. I was going to be a timekeeper, but that all never materialized.
Sure. So in '76, you came to Story. Do you remember your anniversary date?
Well, I think I started April 1st. I think
okay. No fooling?
Yeah. So.
Then. So what position did you come in, and what was your first project assignment?
Well, it's actually, I said I worked for 3 because it was Allen Construction. But anyway, I came and I interviewed Ted Hagen. Well, I think Ted Hagen and Dick Johnson.
Was Woody Buck around at the time?
Yeah, there was.
Or Dean Porath, maybe?
Dean Porath. And Bill Allen, that's what I was going to say.
Okay.
And then I think Woody might have been there too. There was this, we were in Ted's office, and it just seemed like I had this whole group of people that I was sitting there. But we talked, and they offered me a job as a superintendent. So I accepted their offer, and the next weekend I came back, and Jeannie Johnson, but she wasn't married to Dick then. She was working for Gray Real Estate. Took us to look at a house, and we ended up buying a house that was in Gilbert that was almost done. And so we picked out carpet and paint and some things. And,
sure.
And did that move. But so then it was Allen Construction. They asked whether I wanted to go to JT&S or Allen, and I could have done residential or commercial. My experience was with merit companies, and my experiences with a lot of schools, hospitals, commercial. So I said, yeah. And then later that year, Bill Allen split from and Story was formed, which was the commercial side. And Bill kept the residential side, and Gray Real Estate was working with.
So you were part of Story right from the very beginning when it transitioned from.
Allen was in '72, so
right.
And they had done some both, but yeah, I was with Story when it was called Story. Yeah.
Yep. Do you remember why they called it Story? How they came up with that name?
No, I don't.
They didn't consult you?
They didn't ask me. No.
Okay.
I figured it was because of the Story County, but
Yeah, I think that's true. So do you remember the first project you worked on?
well, when I first came to work, I went to the meats lab, and Larry Sperlich was the superintendent there. Donnie Paris was there. Craig he was a foreman. But so I worked with him on that project. But then when we got close to fall, then they got a project which was Reed Cadillac, which is now Wilson Toyota. And so I went on that. So that was my first project I took out of the ground.
First solo?
For Story, yeah.
Okay. So just kind of walk through then your career in terms of maybe roles in the company, positions, sort of as you saw it from where you sat.
Well, no, I mean, I was a superintendent, so I worked several projects around Ames, and then I kind of was thinking, okay, well, I don't know if I want to be a 50-year-old superintendent. I was looking at career path and that kind of stuff, and I always thought it'd be neat to go back to school. So in '83, I was working at Iowa Falls at a hospital there, and I decided to go back to Iowa State. So I went and I talked to Dick and said, well, what he thought of the idea, and so I did, and so in the fall of, I figured out the whole schedule to take me through the thing, working and going to school and classes, and I went in construction engineering, but there were I had to work some stuff out because I had to take some courses over again and so on, but so. Worked in the office then, project engineer, although they called me a engineering assistant because I wasn't an engineer yet. And Norm was, he was like, you're not an engineer, but enjoyed that, and then graduated in '88.
So you worked and went to school for 5 years.
Yeah.
And I'll say in the middle of your career. So that's a big commitment.
Yeah, because Bonnie took a job at Iowa State in admissions, and so the first year I worked full time because I was just taking courses at night. I had to take some catch up on some of the calculus that I needed, and then I worked about 25 hours a week for the rest of the years, and then went to classes.
Yeah, because they didn't probably offer a lot of Con E classes at night. It was mostly during the day. Yeah. I bet you were a pretty good student, weren't you?
Well, I had decided that I would sit in the front row and they would know my name when I it wasn't, you mature, and so, it's something you want to do. And I enjoyed school, but I was not going to fail at.
Do you remember your GPA?
Oh, well, when I went, I think I was like about a 2.5 or something when I went in, but I was over a 3 point when I left.
I'm sure. I have no doubt. All right, so you graduate with your Con E degree from Iowa State, then what?
Well, so, I was interviewing some companies and stuff, and I remember we were doing some strategic planning sessions, and everybody was out to the union doing that, and I was the only one in the office, and nobody had asked me about going to work or anything, and so I ended up checking on some others. But then I think the guy I talked to Norm or Dick and said, hey, you should talk to Larry. And so they did, and they said, why don't we go ahead and hire you? You can get a car, and we'll do this and that and whatever. And so that was that. I actually accepted a position as a project manager upon graduation one semester before I graduated.
Got it.
So started that. So then I came back and I was a project manager.
And so what, do you recall what was maybe one of your first big jobs that you had when you were a PM? I guess the classroom office building at UNI had to be right in there,
that had
didn't
to be
it?
real close to one of the first ones. Yeah. I mean, I'd done a lot of, when I was going to go back, I was going to go to Iowa City to do the theater building back in '83. But then when I decided to go back to school, of course, I couldn't do that. So then I went down that summer before, because we were finished up at Iowa Falls, the hospital, and finished up a school down there, for Marty. And then Marty went to the theater.
Got it.
Yeah, and then he had a heart attack, and then Donnie ended up taking over that project.
Marty Martinson.
Marty Martinson did, yeah. So he came back to Ames. But so I did a whole bunch of projects, Green Hills, and
Sure.
a whole bunch of stuff, and then, but I can't remember. I think Adel Soto might have been right in there.
A school job?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. So you're a PM, but I know you didn't spend your career as a PM. So you led estimating. You did a number of things. So talk more about your kind of journey.
Well, I got stock in '90. '90s was kind of like, it was a neat time for me. I mean, I got stock in '90, and then we ended up. I started on the board of directors in '95, but I started. They decided to ask me about taking over estimating to just do as a. And so sometime, I can't remember when, maybe it was '93 or something like that, I started an estimating department, so to speak, and hired a couple of estimators, and Cindy Lunning was estimating, did a lot of systems. So that was, and then we were talking about computerizing it, and we got Timberline, and I had my own theory about how I thought estimating should go. We, before all the engineers and project managers, we worked all night long, and I said, if I'm going to do this full time, I'm not going to work every night. I want to be ahead of the game. And,
Right.
And then it was just, I got involved in MBI. We went to Timberline conferences, and I saw a bid analysis and thought of, this would be good. It was just a lot of things were going on during that period of time.
There were. And you hired me in that period of time.
Huh?
Remember, I think you called out to the Connie program to find somebody to hire maybe as an intern. And I think you hired me in February of 1990.
1990. I was wondering when that was. Yeah, it was neat.
Yep.
And so then we switched. We did some stuff, and we did the, Pat Gary and Dan Ward and I were senior project managers, and we did some reorganization. Brad Heemstra went over to head up the estimating at that point, and did that for a while, and then switched back to estimating again. Kind of after a few years, we got kind of the bugs out of that. Some things worked and some things didn't.
Sure.
And kind of reorganized again. And then on through till, Dick retired. Of course, then Norm retired, and Dick, and then the other reorganizations where you guys got involved.
pendulum is always in motion.
Yeah.
A pendulum never stays static. Yep. So one thing I remember and always think about when I think of you is your impact on people. You invested a lot in me early and really all throughout my career, but maybe talk about some of the investments you made in people that you're really, really proud of.
Well, yeah, and they asked when I retired, what did you like most about? And it was all the people. I mean, I just got, I think, really blessed and fortunate to come into Story because of the type, always been family companies. Story was an employee-owned company. I think they had I know they did. They had a really, Ted came up with this, employee-owned, working for the store, working for the company, having stock. I mean, it just offered a lot of opportunity to people that probably wouldn't have happened in another environment. And just the perpetuation of the young people in the company and everything. And I really enjoyed, I just really enjoyed working with people and helping people be the best they could be, Rob Greenwood came, was his, I hired him when he was as a laborer when I did medical arts building. And,
Sure.
And ended up, and one of the first jobs he did when I was project manager with me was Ball. And, he did, that just kind of springboarded. He's a good guy. But there are lots.
There are a lot.
Yeah.
There are a lot. There are a lot. So you were the energy behind the development of our small projects group. So what do you remember about how that got started and how that went?
About 2000 or so is when I kind of came up with the idea. And there was a niche out there that we really weren't very good at. And that was, I enjoyed, a lot of neat projects, but I really enjoyed the negotiated and later the design build, because it allowed us to put together our own team, people who shared our values and stuff, and those were just fun projects. And we created good relationship with owners in that process. Maybe build them a building, but then they'd have a little something that they needed done, and we really weren't structured to be able to take care of them. And I just thought it'd be nice to have a unit that could do that, or other small projects for people that needed something done, and then maybe that would lead on to something else for them in the future. And so I kind of came up with that idea, and we had a relationship with Hickory Construction, and as I got talking to them, they had a small projects group. So I laid out a plan and whatever, and ended up hiring Randy Cummings and later Ron North. And Randy and I actually went out to Hickory to spend a week out there to see how they did their group, and figured there's no, you don't have to reinvent the wheel completely. But then, started the small projects group. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it, and Randy and Ron took the lead on it, and yeah.
They still are. 20 years later.
Yeah, we're still here.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you and Bonnie have a family. So tell us about your kids.
I have a son, Ethan, which is now working for Story. He worked for Story a little bit back at Iowa City and some other projects, and then he went out and worked for Mortensen. But he came back here a few years ago, and we have 2 granddaughters, And so that's nice. And then my daughter Elisa, which is got mental disabilities and stuff, that I got involved in ARC of Story County through that, and I liked Lions Club too, and those were kind of my deal. But so Lisa still lives in Ames and works at the hospital, and she does fine. And Ethan's now in West Des Moines and working for Story Construction and became a stockholder. So that's kind of neat.
Everybody's pretty close to home.
Yeah.
And Lisa lives on her own, but you see her every day,
Yeah,
right?
just about.
Yeah. And it wouldn't be an Iowa State football game day unless she was with you, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
She loves, we go to football games, basketball games together. I enjoy it and she enjoys it. So.
That's great. That's great. So you had 4 decades in the industry in Iowa. So you interacted with a lot of people. What are some of those enduring relationships that you remember, either with designers or subcontractors, people in the industry?
Yeah. Well, it's so many, and I'll probably misname somebody, but Dick Roseland and Dave Delaney, Bill Dreyer and Craig Schwarzenegger from Waterloo. We did a lot of projects together.
Sure.
Paul
So
Reitz,
those are all architects, right?
those are architects and engineers. Larry Olson. So those are all architects and engineers that I really enjoyed. They work with a slew of them, but and then there was Jim Converse and Jamie Larson, the ACI, Kent Main. We were Mike Boucher was with
Seedorf Masonry.
Seedorf, yeah, and he did a lot. They had Timberline too, so we did a lot of stuff together. Harlan Hansen, the roofing. They were
Harlan's still working at Central States.
Huh?
Harlan is still working at Central States. He just does whatever Mark tells him to do. Then he goes south in the winter.
Jerry Nelson and Carol Nickel and Dennis Tieran in those cases. There was a lot of them, Tim Babcock, he was at the malls and then ended up coming to work for Story for a little while, but then ended up working the drywall with
Mullenbach.
Yeah, and
Mullenbach
he was
drywall.
good.
Yeah.
There were some people in MBI that Dennis Graham, we were on the committee for estimating committee together.
Sure.
And of course, Scott Norval. Scott was from Emmitsburg, so we knew each other in school, and he was older and I graduated a little bit ahead of me, but then, he ended up being the executive director there. So that was just, Terry Nelson. There's just so many,
Yeah, so a lot of names that I recognize, a lot of I'll say local people, local to central Iowa, subcontractors, suppliers, association members, architects and engineers.
Yeah, it was fun. Like I say, not only just working with them, but also, you got to know people, some in the industry through MBI.
How about owners that you served or that you worked with before?
Well,
I've heard you talk about the guy at Ball, the owner of Ball Plastics, or the owner's rep that you dealt with there.
Yeah, there was, people with Rouse Management, and I can't remember. And then Ball was we worked at Premium Standard Farms. I was down there we did all that work. Of course, Dennis Richardson, ended up coming to work for us later on, but. And then we did a lot of work at Iowa State, which,
Probably Bill Whitman. Bill Whitman.
Bill Whitman.
Dean McCormick.
Yeah, Dean McCormick. That's what I was going to say. And then Mark Haas, and there were just a lot of guys out there too that were involved.
Yeah. All right. You have wisdom to impart. So they're young people, whether it's your son Ethan, whether it's people considering a career in the industry, what knowledge would you drop on them and say, pay attention to this, or think about this, or encourage people to do this?
I believe in hard work, paying attention, and then taking pride in what you do and your responsibility and working with other people. I was the type of guys that would see something that I could really relate to, and then I'd pin it up on the board so I'd see it every day. And I had a few of those things, but there was one called the 10 Commandments, but it was helping other people be successful or helping other people be right and not wrong. So I think for young people coming in, just pay attention to people around, take responsibility and try to do your best every day to do the right things.
Yeah, you were here. You were probably had a hand in the hiring of about everybody in the company while you were here after 1990.
Yeah.
You probably didn't make the sole call or the final call, but your fingerprints were on a lot of people that have been here.
I was pretty much, anybody that major hire, whatever, I was consulted at least. That was kind of neat. And, I just always looked for people. And then I think that being part of that, if you're going to hire somebody and you're going to recommend that they come to work for Story Construction, then you somewhat feel obligated to make sure that they are successful. Sure. and are do the right things, and that you get an ownership in it.
Yeah, it's
those people.
It's a reflection.
Yeah,
reflection.
That's the way I feel about it anyway. So you try to make them successful.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, man. Thanks for coming in. So there you have it. You heard it straight from Larry Dix. Not only his path through the industry and his extraordinary, I would consider it extraordinary work ethic related to going back to school midstream in his career with a family. Guy just never gave up. He was relentless in his effort and in his curiosity, and that is a real attribute that I remember about Larry and seek to emulate. Hope you enjoyed it as much as me, and we'll catch you next time.